Good morning. It is really exciting to see so many people here in this beautiful new Washington Post Live Conference Center. It's probably the first time many of you have been here. We think it's a really great facility. I'm happy to welcome you to the inaugural Samsung Vision for Tomorrow Policy Dialogue and today's program, Internet of Things, Transforming the Future. We're talking this morning about the Internet of Things, which is the connective tissue that bridges the physical and digital worlds into a system for smarter and better living. And we have some very knowledgeable experts with us today who are going to be talking about the transformative potential benefits of IoT for our society, and also the need for collaboration between the public and private sector to realize those benefits. So it's going to be a very interesting morning. Before we start, I have one important note. I'd like to encourage all of you here in the room and those who are watching the live stream on the internet to please join the conversation on Twitter at SamsungDC, #Vision4Tech. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our company's worldwide leader, the Vice Chairman and CEO of Samsung Electronics, Dr. O.H. Kwon.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Washington Post. It's an ideal venue for our discussion today about how technology is transforming the world, transforming it for a purpose. Not just the way we live and work, but the way we protect our families and our health. But the way we improve our infrastructures and our environment. And the way we use public policy to improve people's lives. This is our vision for tomorrow. Using technology to bring better quality of life. We are entering a new era, the age of the Internet of Things. You may know IoT as a combination of sensors, processing devices, and the Internet. Technology-centered definition like this is helpful. But we prefer a much more human-centered definition of IoT. One includes IoT's purpose and significance for people. For Samsung, IoT means bringing the physical and digital worlds together to improve quality of life. People must be at the center of everything to do if we want to realize IoT's full potential. IoT is already taking shape in the home, office, and factory, creating smarter ways of living and working. It is making us more efficient and saving us time to spend with our families, our business, and our communities. But IoT can do much more to meet essential human needs. Let's look at it, how one Samsung SmartThings user helped her family adjust to dementia.
Jeff has Lewy body dementia. Jeff sometimes leaves his property and walks into town without telling his wife, but he always takes his keys. Jeff's daughter, Kath, was worried about her dad's safety, so she turned to IoT for a solution. Kath installed a SmartThings hub in Jeff's home and a presence sensor on her dad's keychain. If Jeff leaves his property, the sensor on his keychain sends a message to the SmartThings hub inside. A voice message plays over speakers inside the house to alert Jeff's wife, Dad has left the premises. And it sends a message to Kath's smartphone. Thanks to IoT, Jeff's family can have peace of mind, and Jeff has a safer, better life. To take this capability to the next level, Samsung is now collaborating with Deakin University in Australia. We'll explore using pattern recognition and IoT to monitor daily habits through a range of sensors in the home and provide alerts automatically if the resident is having problems.
This story raises a crucial point about bringing IoT to scale. Today, IoT is changing individual lives. But tomorrow, using IoT, we can give the same independence to millions of Americans. We can keep people out of hospitals and nursing homes. As our population lives longer, these benefits and the cost of savings for society cannot be ignored. And healthcare is just one example. One day, IoT can provide early warnings of earthquakes by crowdsourcing data from motion sensors in smartphones. Then shut down gas lines before the quake hits, potentially saving thousands of lives. IoT is also driving energy savings, which at large scale will help add up to enormous benefits for society. For example, WeatherBox is using thermostats and weather data to optimize the temperature and the efficiency of your home. That kind of changes make us a big difference added up across millions of homes. In fact, by 2020, IoT could cut carbon emission by 9 gigatons annually. That's almost 19% of global annual emissions. Our challenge is to unlock these benefits by bringing IoT to scale. So, how can we do this? First, by learning how powerful IoT can be as a public policy tools, not only in healthcare or energy, but across many public sector challenges. Let me show you an example.
There are over 600,000 bridges in the United States, and the average age of these bridges is 42 years old. Each day, 200 million trips are taken across bridges that are classified as deficient in America's major cities. The cost of putting sensors on 600,000 bridges would be enormous, but policymakers need data to make sure all of America's bridges are safe. Professor Hae-Young No at Carnegie Mellon University turned to IoT for a solution. Professor No thought, instead of a sensor on each bridge, why not put a sensor on the vehicles that cross bridges every day? Ambulances, police cars, postal trucks. Vibration sensors can measure the health of a bridge when a vehicle passes over it. The internet can transfer this information to a central database. Government engineers could receive alerts automatically when bridges are unsafe. All of this data could help to repair and maintain our bridges before they fail. It could keep millions of Americans safer every day and keep them moving to and from their jobs, schools, and families, just by transforming the way we think about IoT.
At Samsung, we believe in thinking differently about solving problems with the IoT. Everyday objects can be transformed into solutions. Trucks can become mobile data collectors, making our bridges and our people safer. We just need the creativity to see these things from a new angle. And we need to empower people around the world to do the same. This is why we launched our Makers Against Drought competition. Drought ignores national borders. So we issued a challenge to innovators around the globe. How would you use IoT to tackle drought? The ideas are pouring. Let me show you a few examples.
With the eddy, farmers will have a tool to understand their soil problems and act on them. Farmers think about their soil salinity by giving them the tools they need to remove salt on their own. With the eddy, instead of flushing thousands of gallons of an increasingly scarce resource, they're able to achieve greater crop yields with only the water that they need.
Our goal with our eddy app is to empower farmers to make decisions for their crops as quickly as possible and to recognize patterns over time.
This machine harvests water out of air using Duke's patented dual-stage technology. The Arctic board is the brain of the system. It is responsible for data acquisition. It is also responsible for network connectivity to the cloud so that user data can be all collected and for future analytics and machine learning.
W3S was created to encourage leadership by example for municipal governments by preventing water waste at the most senior level.
I'm now going to go ahead and spray sensor 1 with some water. And there it goes, that was quick. In the Twilio account, it said that it detected the water was on. So there you go, that's the full system.
Truly inspiring, isn't it? I want to highlight one more benefits IoT's economic potential. Already, IoT is transforming entire industries. What this means in practice is jobs and growth. A recent study showed IoT can have a global economic impact of more than $11 trillion annually by 2025. Now, that is a very compelling vision of tomorrow. So how do we get there? The good news is many of the building blocks of our IoT future are already in place. In fact, Samsung built many of them. Our starting point was to learn the lessons of the digital age so far. We know that technology delivers best for our societies when it is human-centered, open, and collaborative. A human-centered approach is at Samsung's core. What do you mean by this? Simply, technology must be designed with the people at its core. If it does not improve a person's life, it will not be adopted. And to bring IoT to scale, it must be useful and improve lives across society. A human-centered approach also means that technology for people must come from people, not just from Silicon Valley or Washington, D.C., but from everywhere. So we must be open to innovation from all corners, which leads me to openness. If we want innovators everywhere to embrace IoT, we must make sure IoT tools are open to them. This means technologies that connect to each other. For example, Arctic is a powerful IoT platform that we have made available to developers, large and small. Arctic is interoperable across common operating systems and wireless standards. That means innovators can use Arctic to create seamless IoT solutions. You can learn more about IoT just outside this room. Likewise, the SmartThings, a Washington, D.C. startup we acquired in 2014, is compatible with the hundreds of IoT devices from a wide range of manufacturers. We know that boundaries around technologies hold back innovations and scale. And innovation flourishes when the brightest mindset can come together. which brings me collaboration. A collaborative approach will be vital to realizing IoT's vast opportunities and addressing the challenges of bringing it to scale. That means bringing together all sectors to be open through voluntary standards and by opening up more wireless spectrum. We also need shared approaches to privacy and security. At Samsung, our commitment to privacy by design and security by design is all of our technology. That's because, quite simply, security and privacy cannot be added after the fact. That's why Arctic has advanced security features built in. Government and industry have already collaborated well to promote this principle, and we must continue to do so. Now, to bring IoT collaboration to the next level, I would like to ask Doug Davis from Intel and Dean Garfield from the Information Technology Industry Council to join me on the stage. Today, we are delighted to announce the formation of the National IoT Strategies Dialogue to be run by Dean and his staff at ITI. Samsung is proud to be a founding partner along with Intel and ITI. Let's hear some comments on IoT from two gentlemen.
Thank you. So thank you. Intel is very pleased to be a co-founder of this National IoT Strategy Dialogue. And this is important in that it is an initiative that is consistent with the goals of the pending DIGIT Act. And it provides an opportunity for industry to be able to provide recommendations that will help shape a national IoT strategy. So we look forward to collaborating with members of the ITI, with others in the industry, other technology companies, other industry leaders, as well as with federal policymakers to help to enable the U.S. to have a leadership position in the Internet of Things. Thank you.
Thanks. Good morning. Doug, you captured it well. ITI very much is proud of partnering with Samsung, Intel, all of our members, and hopefully all of you in blazing a path forward. We very much look forward to turning today's discussion and talk into tomorrow's tangible action so that the narrative from today about transforming the future can come to fruition. So I look forward to working with all of you on this initiative. Thanks.
Take pictures. Take pictures. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. We also look forward to hearing from Dean and David Doug in our panel discussions later this morning. We hope today's announcement shows again Samsung's deep investment in the U.S. We have been here since 1978 and employ over 15,000 people here. And now I'm excited to show how we are moving IoT to the center of our strategy. I'm pleased to announce that Samsung is planning to spend $1.2 billion in the U.S. for IoT investments and R&D over the next 4 years. This investment will be led by Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center and Global Innovation Center and Samsung Research America, all of which are US located. Let me conclude with one crucial point. Today's announcements are about determining the next steps for IoT. They are not about the first steps. That's because IoT is already happening all around us. Conversations about IoT are already happening around the world. from the kitchen tables to boardroom tables. The National IoT Strategy Dialogue will help bring those conversations to cabinet tables as well. It also represents our deep conviction. We all need to start talking and think differently about IoT. It's time to imagine the transformative potential of IoT for our societies and learn how to achieve the human social benefits at scale. So this is my call to you today. Let's move ahead together towards an IoT with a human purpose to improve lives for real people everywhere. We hope you will come with us on this exciting journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwan, for that inspiring vision. And thank you also to Doug Davis and Dean Garfield. We look forward to collaborating with you in the National IoT Strategy Dialogue. So those of you standing in the back, there are a few empty seats in the front row, so don't be shy. I'm happy now to introduce the moderator of our first panel, which will be talking about the IoT and where it is today and where it will be bringing us. The moderator is Curtis Sasaki of Samsung, Vice President of Ecosystems and General Manager of IoT.
Thank you. Good morning. I think we have a very exciting panel. We have a combination of folks in policy and government, as well as folks in industry. So maybe we'll see some fireworks debate between government policymakers and us in industry. My name is Curtis Sasaki, and I've been involved in IT for quite a while, but I have backgrounds in actually helping to create new ecosystems, working on Java in the early days, as well as spent some time over in Cupertino Company with. So one of my colleagues on the panel also was there, so we have some shared experiences. We have Alan Davidson. He's Director of Digital Economy, Senior Advisor to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We'll have all of the panelists give their backgrounds and what they've been working on as well. We have Chris Gerdes, who's Chief Innovation Officer, the United States Department of Transportation. He's also from Stanford University, right around the corner from where I am. And we have Jay Kazima. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Breezy. They're working on some very interesting technology, really around digital health. And we have Vineet Shahani. He's the director from a company probably all of you have heard of called Nest. And he and I also have a shared person that we both know quite well is Tony Fadell. So he and I worked together in the past. So a very distinguished panel. So we'll have each of the panelists maybe give their background and what they are working on today.
Great. Hi. Good morning. I'm Alan Davidson, Director of Digital Economy at the Department of Commerce. Department of Commerce has a broad mission to promote economic opportunity and growth in the United States and around the world. And we have a digital economy agenda that's also broad, designed to promote openness and freedom in the digital economy, trust, access, and skills online, and promoting innovation and new technology. IoT fits squarely in that mission. We are very excited about its potential as a source of growth and opportunity, all the kinds of exciting new developments that we've been hearing about already this morning. we are not traditionally a regulator in the space for the most part. We do have this broader mission, though, and so we are keenly interested in thinking about how we can promote the opportunities that IoT offers, and also help to deal with some of the challenges that we also know, the policy challenges that will arise as it's used more and more. My other claim to fame today, in terms of why we're here and why we're so glad to be here, is that we recently completed a request for comments in the department asking for input from the private sector, from stakeholders, regarding a bunch of different questions about Internet of Things. We got over 130 comments, the vast majority of them very substantive, and we're really looking at three questions. What are the big opportunities facing us? What are the big policy challenges? And what is the appropriate role for government in that space? We bring a lot of expertise at the Commerce Department, working on issues from standards to policy issues like privacy and security, international trade issues, and we're keenly interested in how we can help promote a whole-of-government approach to Internet of Things, of course led by the private sector, but thinking about what the appropriate role for government, how we can help with this exciting new area.
Great. Chris?
Great. So I'm Chris Gerdes. I'm on leave from Stanford University for a year to serve as the USDOT's first Chief Innovation Officer. I've been working with automated vehicles since about 1992 as part of what I do in my lab at Stanford, and so that's one of the things I get to assist the department with. But I'm also fortunate to help with the broader innovation portfolio. So safety, innovation, and opportunity are Secretary Fox's three major areas of focus at USDOT. And there's a lot of fascinating things going on in the innovation space. The Smart City Challenge being one example of going out to cities and to mayors and asking for their ideas. How can they mobilize new public-private partnerships to really advance the cities and provide not only connectivity, but opportunity? I think that's one of the exciting things about the Internet of Things, not necessarily just connecting the stuff, but using that to connect people, to provide really point-to-point mobility that will serve all members of society, regardless of somebody's economic status, regardless of somebody's physical abilities, to be able to get from any one point to any other point, connection to jobs, to healthcare. These are the things that the Secretary cares strongly about. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to work with so many people at DOT to help move the ball forward on these areas. And so it's great to share some of that here today and hopefully get other people fired up on what the Internet of Things can do to really advance mobility.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Jay Kazimi, founder and CEO of Breezy. With Breezy, our starting point is really that technology can fundamentally transform a senior's life, but often they don't engage with it because it's either considered complex or not relevant. And what Breezy has been doing is really bringing in, through the Breezy platform, a wide range of benefits, everything from communication to content to commerce, entertainment, health, to a senior. And we've been doing that a lot using some of the Samsung technologies, really addressing, I think, the key challenge, which is how do you personalize technology for a senior? Because often when we look at seniors, we try to think of them as one homogeneous group, but our experience is it's extremely fragmented. And there are different contexts, different digital literacies, different physical abilities, different cognitive abilities. So how does technology make sense to a senior? And we've been doing that for the last 5 years, started in the UK, expanded in the US. The reason I'm here today is over the last couple of years, the problem we are getting more focused on solving, both in Europe and also here in the US, is really around helping a senior age in place. And the minute you talk about aging in place, almost the second word is IoT, because you cannot scale up the caregiving needs of seniors if they age in place without technology. So that's what we are doing. We are located in Pittsburgh, reason being close to proximity to Carnegie Mellon, so we want to use a lot of the machine learning, artificial intelligence, from all the sensory input that we get from lots of devices around us to really help the senior age in place. So thank you.
And my name is Vineet Shahani. I'm a director in the legal department at Nest, and it's great to be here with you today. At Nest, I counsel our hardware products and our services. So as you've probably seen in the media, we have a Nest camera, we have a Nest Protect smoke alarm and carbon monoxide detector, and then of course we have the flagship product, which is the Nest thermostat. I work on product issues. I also am the lead transactional lawyer at Nest, so that involves doing a range of commercial engagements with our supply chain, with our sales teams, with our Works with Nest developer program, where we bring in third parties to interconnect with our products. Before Nest, as Curtis said, I was at Cupertino Company, working on iPhone and iPod, and so I've seen a range of visible connected products and worked on legal and policy issues on those. At Nest, the obvious things are the hardware products, which is the things I mentioned, but in addition to that, to really bring the promise of the products to the market, we obviously have mobile apps that need to be built around that. We have a very vibrant e-commerce presence that has a great deal of resources. We have services that we'll probably talk about a little bit, which is our partnerships with utility companies, with insurance companies, really bringing the functionality of these products to life. And then the last thing is this developer program that I mentioned, which is the idea that Nest isn't going to build all the products. There's plenty of great products out there. There's plenty of great companies doing things that we want to work with, and so we've put together a great and very large program to work with them.
Great. One of the questions that I get asked quite a bit is, why is IoT happening now? And there seems to be, at least from my view, 4 different technology areas that sort of converge, and I have maybe the panel also give their comments. But first, if you think about semiconductors, I think mobile devices have really enabled semiconductors, memory to be even more powerful and very power efficient. Number 2 is sensor technologies. To think most of our mobile phones today have 9 different sensors, but there's also many industrial sensors being developed. Third is wireless technologies. Just a few years ago, there's only a few wireless capable networking standards, but now we see things like LTE Cat 0, Cat 1. We have low power, wide bandwidth networking technologies from Sigfox and LoRa. And then the fourth area, I remember 4.5 years ago talking to engineers about big data. And at the time, big data was kind of rocket science. Today, it's sort of the norm. And the new rocket science is really around machine learning, deep learning algorithms. So I think those 4 key technology areas have really enabled IoT to finally really blossom. And I'd like some of the panelists to sort of give their view of maybe there's other technology trends that have really made IoT happen, maybe business issues that have changed things. So maybe we'll start with Alan.
Sure, and I think you've captured it nicely. I will say, I came to this relatively recently as a kind of, I will confess, an Internet of Things skeptic in some ways, in the sense that, as a kind of fallen computer scientist, I look at this and think, we've always had an Internet of Things, right? The Internet is mostly connecting things. So, is this really different, or is this just another buzzword, right? And I guess I will say, to paraphrase the great rock band, the Monkees, I'm a believer. I think we are seeing something that is, for the set of reasons that you talked about, a confluence of both technical capabilities combined with business imperatives and business demand that I think we believe is going to be really transformative. It's going to be qualitatively different in a lot of different ways, both in its scope, in terms of the number of devices. The number of devices now far exceeds the number of people on the planet, but also the uses of those devices. And we've heard about a lot of the great, very cool consumer-facing things. We're also really excited and interested in what's going to happen on the industrial Internet of Things. And so we see this there's tremendous demand out there that is now, because we've gotten to this, I guess, maybe tipping point of connectivity and intelligence in devices that can be also, done at a very small level. The ubiquity of connectivity, those things all together are leading to something that we feel is different and deserves to be thought about in a coherent way.
One thing I'll toss on top of that is that, I think necessity is the mother of invention. So from the transportation side, there is a real need that's driving a lot of the demand for the connectivity and for smart cities. The Secretary put together the Beyond Traffic report, which really talks about extrapolating where we're going to be in 2045 if we keep doing things the way that we're doing. I'll cut to the chase. It's not pretty. It's an excellent report, and I definitely recommend people take a look at that. It shows really the increasing demand on our transportation systems, the challenge that we have with maintaining basic infrastructure and the needs to do things very, very differently. So if you think about apps that you may use for transportation, a lot of these may be to get you around traffic and to get you around congested areas, thinking about navigating cities, how to deal with increased density in our cities. You don't have to go too far to see the strains on WMATA here in DC, both from an infrastructure standpoint and from a demand standpoint. So there are some real demands that are driving this need for connectivity and just different approaches to be smarter and to deliver transportation and government in different ways.
I would just build on that and say, I think also in the last sort of 5-10 years, the services and the data that's sort of accessible and can be integrated together, so the open platforms, that helps with this as well. So, we talked about sensors and the intelligence part. Marrying that is now becoming possible. So I'll take a simple example. I mean, if you want to have temperature control, you need a feed from the weather, which is a different feed maybe from the temperature in your house. Okay, 5 years down the ago, that it was impossible to sort of combine these two feeds together to create the intelligence that we need today. So I think the usage that all of us have sort of had over the last sort of 5-10 years, that has created that data on which now we can, I think, build the intelligence, which didn't exist probably 10 years ago.
So there's lots of statistics about how big the IoT market's going to be. I think we'll see what's right and wrong there. But in terms of just a graphic for me is just, I guess I would say, we just passed Father's Day. And if I would have told you 4 years ago that you were going to give or receive a thermostat for Father's Day, you'd probably think that was nuts. But in fact, we saw a great lift this weekend from people buying thermostats. So I think that just kind of, you look at connected TVs, you look at just the different ways that this technology in a short period of time has changed the way people look at issues that have often been neglected. I guess I'll just give a little anecdote. When you think about Nest and you look back at how it was founded, it wasn't founded by energy people or by people with knowledge of fire safety. It was actually founded by people that knew smartphones and knew the technology that goes into power capacity, sensors, all the sort of algorithms and things that are around smartphones, and they brought that technology to new problems, right? So energy conservation, safety, and security. And I think that's what's really interesting about this space is that you've got a lot of learnings in other spaces from the internet era, from the past, and you're going to now try to apply that to these very big issues facing our society.
That's great. One of the things I also get the privilege of doing is talking to a lot of startup companies. And a lot of folks think about IoT as just for consumer products. But I think was already mentioned, there's a lot of enterprise, industrial applications. I'll just mention a couple, and maybe the panelists can give sort of their views, even beyond your area, what you're seeing happening. But I've talked to companies who are developing sensors that will go on utility poles. One thing that Dr. Kwan mentioned was putting sensors to detect earthquakes on utility poles. And what was surprising to me is in the U.S. alone, there's over 160 million still utility poles out there. So I'm sure some enterprising startup company will figure out a way to deploy sensors on utility poles. Now, these sensors could detect not only earthquakes, but could have microphones to detect gunshot sounds or gas leaks. Maybe that would have helped in California when we had the San Bruno fire. I also have talked to companies who are developing sensors for hospital beds. And the idea and premise is the actual angle of the bed can actually impact recovery times. So a very simple sensor with an accelerometer can do that with wireless technology. I also heard from sort of supply chain retail that this one very large soft drink manufacturer loses about $100 million annually because managers and retail shops don't restock their shelves, with their soft drinks. So the kinds of applications I think we'll see IoT being deployed on is pretty diverse, compared to just how people might think today. So I'm kind of curious to know, what you think we should be seeing in the future.
Well, I guess I'll jump in and start by saying, I mentioned this earlier, we certainly are hearing a lot about the industrial Internet of Things. And for example, Secretary Pritzker was just over at the Hanover Messe trade fair in Germany. And this was a major centerpiece of things that we heard about. Germany's got its Industry 4.0 initiative, and the use of the Internet of Things in areas like supply chain management. I think are going to be very big, and it's stuff that we don't hear about as much. We recently heard of a kind of interesting example from a company that's doing something in the agricultural space, where they have a small device that they put in the back of produce and grain trucks to monitor the temperature, and just to make sure, and to you can use that to indicate which trucks should be offloaded first. We're using this already in government. NOAA, which is part of the Department of Commerce, and the National Weather Service, using devices, using the Internet of Things type devices for weather monitoring. We imagine we're going to be using them in the next deployment of the census. We're also deeply involved in the Smart Cities initiative, though that's again starting to be a little bit more consumer facing. But I think actually in a lot of ways we may see some of these industrial uses getting bigger faster, in part because a lot of the policy issues are a little less, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure, but a little less fraught. But I think they are there too. But this is certainly going to be a huge area for use, and maybe a little less visible because these cool consumer products, are the things that are appropriately gathering a lot of attention, and I think are also transformative.
Yeah, I would just really quickly just add on to that. I do think business and government is where you're going to see this adoption quicker, and I think that's because the productivity gains and the cost savings are just more of a priority and easier to convey. In the consumer market, I think it's a pretty immense engineering task to be compatible with HVAC systems in the U.S., much less getting into Europe and into Asia. It's beyond engineering. Just conveying the benefits to customers is something that takes time. These are often products that don't have the replacement cycles of mobile phones. They're often at a premium price. At Nest, we spend a lot of time trying to do partnerships with utilities and insurance companies to get the price down, to get them more accessible to people more broadly. And so I think until you see sort of literacy of these products and broadband access and just other issues, infrastructure getting stronger, consumer adoption is more challenging, I think, than people think.
There are a lot of great places to put these in the cities. You mentioned utility poles. Street lights are another place where you can envision putting sensors and intelligence. Sidewalk Labs, which is a partner with USDOT on the Smart City Challenge, actually has kiosks that they can put on street corners, which do a number of things. They provide sensing, the gunshot detection that you mentioned, but also just understanding pedestrian counts as a function of time of day, being able to count cars and look at traffic patterns. But more importantly, also being able to provide Wi-Fi and provide a console so that you can help bridge the digital divide, so that all of these benefits that we're talking about here don't only accrue to people who can afford a smartphone, but you would have the ability to come up to a kiosk and, for instance, know that the elevator was broken down at the metro stop, and you would have to find alternate transportation if you were wheelchair bound. You could figure all that out on the kiosk without having to rely on a smartphone. So I think there's some really nice opportunities here if we are able to think in one coherent package of not just isolated sensors and things there, but how do we solve real problems with this stuff? How do we make sure that we have sort of ports where you can provide services to people, and a lot of these things come together. And this is one of the things that the DOT is very involved with, trying to develop an open platform for some of these transportation services that people can plug in and provide better services.
And I think, if you look at some of the examples that we mentioned, whether it's agriculture, transport, logistics, health, these may seem like incremental changes, but actually, when you sort of observe closely, it's actually a paradigm shift. We're moving from being reactive to being proactive, right? So when it comes to transport, better planning, smart cities, it's all about better traffic planning and better city planning rather than sort of, taking actions in a reactive way. I'll give you a simple example and then I'll end this. I'm seeing this a lot with another simple example, prosthetics, right? Just having sensors embedded in prosthetics changes the paradigm from fall detection to fall prevention, right? Small thing, but huge difference in terms of healthcare costs, in terms of cost of sort of managing those falls. And we are seeing these little sensors, just an accelerometer in the prosthetics, another sensor which is sort of detecting your gait and suggesting to you that maybe you should correct it so you don't fall, right? So I think that's, I really see that more and more connecting all these services. And I think you said that, it's about the necessity. I think the necessity is the paradigm shift that we need to solve the problems.
Okay, well, maybe we'll take on a hot, juicy topic. I know I got a word from Twitter that I should change my password. So maybe we'll have a discussion about sort of privacy and security. I saw this latest number about how much data is now being collected from many different devices, and I didn't even realize how much data within the last couple of years. What should sort of government policies be toward privacy, consumer security, all those kinds of issues that we read about, unfortunately, almost on a daily basis now?
I was going to say, one government policy could be to let industry lead. So I'll let you guys know.
Alan already said.
I do have a few things to say, but why don't you guys go, please?
So we were pleased to submit comments to the NTIA, and I got a chance to work on it quite a bit. So appreciate you guys taking the lead on that. What we said in there, to summarize, was that privacy is paramount. I mean, we're getting invited into people's homes. They're paying a premium price for the product, and we need to get it right, or adoption won't happen. And I don't think this industry, on any level, but particularly on the consumer level, will take off. Some of the challenges that we see, so your traditional notions of giving people notice and getting their consent is challenged just by the nature of these products, the form factor of them, the fact that some of them don't have screens. So you have to be more creative in thinking through how to get that. Even when you get people's consent, we believe you have to continue to give them choice, right? And give them the opportunity to opt out. And we do, right from the beginning, think about how to stop data sharing or how to use devices off Wi-Fi, right? So our thermostat or the smoke alarm, they still work as those products even when they're not connected to Wi-Fi and sharing data. The other thing is, in an ecosystem, and when we're talking about the Internet of Things, we are talking about connected products from different manufacturers, and so there is sharing that's inevitably going to happen. We believe you have to give very clear notice to customers about what data is actually being shared. And in our case, in our Works with Nest program, we don't just say what data is being shared, but we actually ask the developer to say why they need this data, and then follow very strict policies around how they retain it and delete it, et cetera. Again, I think that this is just one of these issues, security and privacy, that is critical to just getting adoption, getting this whole thing off the ground.
So we didn't get a chance to comment, so I'm excited about this. So I think two areas. One is around identity management. So what I mean by that is not just the minute you talk about Internet of Things, you're talking about the ID of that thing as well, right? And how do you sort of really manage shared identities, because that's what we are evolving to now. You know, I may have my accounts, my wife may have her accounts, but if you're staying in a smart apartment, now we have shared identity with the apartment, right? So I think really that is an area where I think government should take lead. The other is, and we see this all the time, is we are building a lot of our solutions on the basis that the network that is supporting, and you mentioned that, you know, the wireless network is an important factor, right? Is going to support mission critical applications, and it's going to be secure, and there will be regulations around, you know, how that network is managed and operated, right? So I think those are two areas where I think this requires a lot more discussion, requires really, you know, I think the government to take a lead on.
One thing in transportation that the Department of Transportation has encouraged is the auto ISAC. So having the automakers come together and share best practices for cybersecurity. I think that is one good model of the government helping to convene, but understanding that it's probably not the department's role to get smarter about cybersecurity than all the people developing these systems and attempt to set rigid design standards, because this is constantly evolving. And so it really is creating an environment of sharing and of best practices to really help people keep up with the emerging threats. Another area that I think government plays a very important role that people often overlook is that a lot of the deployments of these systems are handled by state and local governments. And that's actually a real workforce challenge. If you think about sort of the traditional skills in transportation and in infrastructure maintenance, haven't necessarily involved installation and programming, setting up defaults of IoT devices. And so this is a real challenge that's being discussed. How do you make sure that people have all of the appropriate skills, all the appropriate sensitivity to issues of privacy and cybersecurity as they install these devices on the working level?
So, I'd start with the notion that already has been said, that trust is absolutely essential if we're going to realize the promise of all of these innovations that we're talking about today. And you think about so many of the things that we've already been discussing today, they really involve the use of data, and the use of data in ways that we haven't necessarily used data before. And with that comes a real responsibility around privacy and the related issues around security. So these absolutely need to be addressed. The administration has kind of put forward its own comprehensive privacy blueprint back in 2012. But this isn't an area where we're expecting legislation anytime soon. And I think I was only half kidding when I said I think this is an area where we really are looking and need industry to be innovative. I think a lot of the traditional notions of bedrocks of our privacy approach, for example, consumer notice, consumer choice, they're challenged in this area, right? We're talking about devices where people don't, it's not like you can click on a privacy policy. It's not like there's a lot of notice for consumers. And so we really are going to have to be clever and innovative about how we give people notice, how we give people choice, how we think about the related issues about how we use data over time, and how we communicate that, what's collected, what's not collected, what's anonymized. And so I think we're really looking to industry. I think, especially on the security side, one thing that we've been really interested in is this question of field upgradability, for example. You know, how often are devices connecting? Do they have the ability to get the latest security patch? Do consumers even know this is something they have to do now with their thermostat or their refrigerator, and how do we communicate that? And I know that industry's been very clever in thinking about how to deal with some of these things, but it is challenging the traditional notions we've had about this, and so it's an area where I think people are going to be paying a lot of attention. It's also an area we've asked a lot about in our RFC, and we've gotten a lot of comments. So I would just say we're keenly interested in these issues, and we welcome this. Will be a big part of the green paper that we put out and in the fall, and so really welcome input on this. And particularly some of these interesting issues, specifically around like the security upgradability issues. So I think it's going to be an area for discussion for a while.
You know, one of my simple use cases, thinking about how cities deploy IoT, driving from San Jose up to Tahoe to go skiing, there's all these webcams now on the freeway. So the nice thing is you can actually go and see real time sort of the traffic condition, weather condition. But I don't know if they put low-res cameras because you can't see people's license plates. Maybe that's the way of having some privacy. But you know, I think one of the questions was, you know, cities are beginning to do these deployments. You know, what's the effect with the federal, with state to actually begin to coordinate getting all this information accessible?
Well, that's certainly one of the goals of the Smart City Challenge, is to have a model city out there. And actually, there's a lot of discussions going on right now about how do you make sure that the lessons learned are shared. Part of that is through developing platforms that can be shared, but there's other approaches as well to make sure that you have a community of cities that are exchanging ideas. You know, as an example, the cities got to see each other's proposals in the first round and incorporate some of the best ideas into their subsequent proposals in the second round of competition. So I think that sort of helped set the stage that this, while it is a challenge, the idea is not simply to reward one city, but to encourage this sort of sharing of ideas, whether they work or whether they don't. All of these things are going to be very important in terms of cities being able to make deployments. One of the other things that comes up is also just metrics. Is it measurable? Because if you're a city and you want to do something, you may not, for instance, want to be installing a bike sharing system. You want to increase mobility, and that's your way of doing it. So how do you get the measurements to know that you're really having the desired outcomes? That's hopefully something that will emerge from both the Smart City Challenge and the community building around that.
Jay, one of the things that we also see as challenges is urbanization plus the aging population. And I know aging population is one of the areas you care deeply about. What other sensor technologies, what other devices do you see being integrated into the platform that you've been working with?
So I think, you know, before I go there, I'll just say that I think the interesting thing about the aging population is it really puts the human side of the equation to the forefront when it comes to IoT. So what I mean by that is, you know, I would just put a smart bulb and operate it from my couch just for the fun of it. You mentioned that to grandma, she'll say that's a very expensive light bulb, right? So when it comes to, I think, you know, the aging population, solving serious challenges. So now you go back to the same grandma and say, how about you say go to sleep and it'll lock your front door, switch off the downstairs light, put the staircase in night mode, dim the bathroom light. It'll do 5 things. Also tell you if the garage door is open or closed, because you have that peace of mind issue. And we see that a lot with seniors. You know, they'll go to bed and then they'll think, did I switch that off or not? And they have to come down. 40% of hospital admissions from seniors are because of falls. 70% of those falls happen in their own house. And a large proportion of that happen when they're walking in the dark. So having just smart lights, just as a simple example, can save all those costs, right? So solving those serious problems, I think, brings even traditionally considered late adopting sort of, population into IoT. What we are also seeing, to answer your question, we are seeing a lot of healthcare or medical devices being integrated, so your blood test or your blood pressure and other things. Again, privacy becomes a key issue there, and consent becomes a key issue. But if that can be shared with your physician, especially in areas where it's not very easy to send a caregiver to someone's house, right? So we are seeing a lot of medical devices being integrated. We are seeing even simple things like, again, you'll be amazed, but a lot of aging-related illnesses happen because of dehydration. Dehydration is linked to poor temperature control in someone's house. We have seen seniors who would say, I'm feeling very cold, turn on the thermostat, I'm feeling warm, open the window. They wouldn't necessarily make the connection that the thermostat and the window, right? So having just intelligence to support them in simple things like that can have a huge impact. So I think my sense is it'll start a lot more with convenience, peace of mind, related sort of problems or use cases that will be solved, because we can jump to monitoring, but the senior will not see it that way. It's intrusive. It's they do want to have control over their life. So the convenience, peace of mind, those things will probably take adoption first before we can really get to the monitoring goal that we have.
So maybe ask Chris this question, because you talked about smart cities. A lot of research shows cities itself are going to get urbanized even more dramatically. So with populations moving to cities, how will smart cities help?
I think this gets back to the necessity issue. As you start looking at density, just simply moving people around becomes a challenge, and making sure that people do have the access to jobs, to healthcare, to the services that they need. So I think that understanding is maybe the first part of that. So as you think about sensing how are people moving in the city, where are the patterns? There's really some fascinating things when you visualize it, that oftentimes cities are not one homogeneous land area, but you see patterns in certain areas. You can see neighborhood dependencies, certain flows. Understanding that, visualizing that, and figuring out how that can impact future transportation decisions. Where do you decide to focus, whether that be transit, whether that be actually creation of new infrastructure. So I think the smart cities will, first of all, give the data to be able to better visualize and to make some of these decisions, and then hopefully make some of those infrastructure investments more flexible as well. So as the patterns of use and of movement in a city change over time, things like transit and services can respond appropriately.
Where do you think autonomous driving, how will that play in smart cities and transportation in general?
Well, I think there's some real fascinating opportunities. Obviously, since working on that since '92, I'm a fan. So I think that automated vehicles can play a big part, and maybe in some different ways than people think. If you look today, about 42% of taxi cab rides are taken by people with household incomes of less than $20,000. So that sort of first mile, last mile ability to get to transit, to get to other places is huge. And so you can think about deployments of automated vehicles doing an awful lot there, helping people who are wheelchair bound. This could really revolutionize paratransit, helping mobility for people who are blind. So I think there's a lot of fascinating uses for automated vehicles. And I think if you start to look at environments that are more constrained, where the vehicles operate at low speeds, where they may be able to be separated from people or complex traffic situations, then we're really only a few years away from that being the sorts of technologies that you could see and experience. So I think what you'll see is that it will come quickly in limited environments, and then hopefully as people gain confidence and acceptance, spread out rapidly from there.
I would just chime in and certainly defer to my colleague who's been deep in this, but we are looking at this. It is an exciting area. I mean, the benefits, not just for providing mobility for those who haven't had it, but the safety ramifications, the economic impact of that. But also, I think we're keenly interested in looking at the kind of knock-on effects that are going to come. it's going to have an impact on car ownership, impact on the insurance industries, impact on, it's coming up in international trade issues. I think, ultimately an impact in urban planning and how people live and how they move. So it's early days, but it is exciting, and our sense as well is that this is something that we'll start to see sooner probably than most people expect, certainly in limited areas. And it's tremendously interesting, both the connected vehicle and the autonomous vehicle work that's being done, and there'll be big policy issues there too.
And I think in short, this is going to change everything.
Yes.
Pretty much there's few aspects of society I think that will remain untouched as we move to automation.
And as we think about this sort of both the industry, how the industry and government work together, there will almost certainly be areas, I think, like transportation, where we'll see initially, because there has to be safety regulation, rules that will come, standards that will come, particularly from particular parts of government. This will happen also in maybe the aerial space. We're seeing that. Part of what we'll need to do is try to make sure that these are not rules that are in conflict with each other, right? That we are providing some consistency to industry, and that industry itself is thinking about interoperability and about standards that are not in conflict when we come up in areas like spectrum or just in security rules. And so that's one of the things we've been thinking about, is how we can partner across government, and that's going to be at the federal and state level too, to make sure at the very least we're not sending conflicting messages.
Yeah, and just to key off of that, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has been looking at operational and deployment guidance for automated vehicles, and this has come up. First of all, there have been a number of public hearings to get people's ideas, to get the input from industry about what is needed, and the approach is really to move forward and try to embrace existing standards and practices as well, and in setting those guidelines so that we achieve exactly the sort of framework where you're talking about, where it encourages innovation, it makes sure that the vehicles that are going out on the road are safe, and we avoid conflicting sets of requirements.
Okay, we have time to actually open it up to questions from the audience. So maybe the tough questions will come now. If you would give your name and who you're with.
Hi, good morning. Stephen Balcom with the Family Online Safety Institute. Very interested to hear about your concerns for our elders. I'm quite interested to hear the panel's reaction to the issues around safety, security, privacy, or just the word trust when it comes to the Internet of Things and our kids. So we have connected toys, Hello Barbie, for instance, which is connected to the cloud. Nike shoes that you can help track your kids with, even web-enabled diapers that text you when something happens.
Quite often.
And presumably there isn't legislation in the offing. So how do we get ahead of the trust and safety issues with the Internet of Things and our kids?
I struggle with that as a parent of a teenager, particularly as all of his schoolwork seems to have moved online. And so now it's, I'm working on my homework. It's amazing how much homework requires the use of YouTube. So it's a challenge, and I have to admit that this is one that we're struggling with in terms of how can we monitor as parents. And I think, and that's one example of the school moving very, very quickly into a way that can enhance educational outcomes, but also place some real challenges on kids. I do find that, the parental monitoring on the router is a great feature. And so I think, as we do talk about Internet of Things and things that impact kids, having some ability to regulate that and have the interfaces so that parents can actually understand what these things do and what their kids are connected with is very important.
And I would just say also, the Federal Trade Commission has been fairly active and engaged in this area. I mean, we also have COPPA, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act. I think there is a framework out there for thinking about these things. Clearly, we're going to need to make sure that parents are pretty well educated about what they're getting into when they buy some of these products. That's
I'll just jump in real quick on the technology side. So we, in the spring, released family accounts to give more granularity to people that use our devices. Huge engineering challenge to think through, because you're tying occupancy to people who has a smartphone, and I have a 7-year-old, and I've been told that you can be 8 and get a smartphone now. So it's sort of earlier and earlier, more and more smartphones, and so I think that's a challenge. And then on the other side, just from the legal side, right, like where is the line in terms of getting consent, when you have the head of the household, even not just relative to kids, but even relative to spouses and others. And so there's a lot in that area.
My name is Bonnie Bracy Sutton, and I want to follow up on that education thing. I'm a teacher. I hear you talk about the seniors growing and learning, but I don't see and I don't hear anything about education. We have big problems in data management, the students' rules. Kids are getting left on buses. There are teachers who have not touched the internet because the professional development has not. What are we doing? Is there a group or anybody who's working on the education space? Because education has become a business, and we have been left out of this IoT for many things.
I wish what we had with our colleagues from the Department of Education. There's a huge amount of work going on in the space. It's a tremendously important question. I think it's very hard to imagine today a high schooler at least doing their homework without internet access and without access to computers. I've experienced this with my own kids, and we know that that's true. So we have a huge issue here, A, with making sure that there's actually access out there and people have the tools they need. B, that we actually have a robust curriculum, and it's not one that just starts in high school, it's one that starts earlier. I've seen, for example, there's folks like Common Sense Media who've done tremendous work in trying to make model curricula that help people become aware of some of the issues that we're talking about. But you're getting to something even more fundamental, which is how do we make sure we've got teachers who have the skills to teach these 21st century tools that kids are going to need. And then we can start to get to how do we actually use IoT to help with education. And I think there are tremendous opportunities, and I think we will see school districts using it for equipment monitoring, buses. You'd like to think about there are a lot of opportunities, but again, the trust piece of it will be essential. But it does begin with education, and we have a huge amount of work to do there, for sure.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, great. Good morning. Alex Custer from the Center for Data Innovation. You did a great job of highlighting the opportunities, and you mentioned automated vehicles and mobility for the blind. I'm actually curious to know if there are other opportunities for improving accessibility with IoT for the differently abled, and how you deal with that in the federal government, but also with your consumer products.
So I can take that. I mean, I think, thank you for asking the question, because I think, I'll give you a simple example, something that's close to our heart because we are working at it at Breezy is how do you adapt touch sensitivity for someone with Parkinson's? Just as a simple example of that right now. So the minute you start integrating sensory input, say from your wearables and other places, you can start getting what the tremor is. We use tablets, and they give us 11 more data points about the user. When they touch, we feel, right? So now it becomes possible, because it's a smart device, to adapt touch sensitivity for someone with Parkinson's. So that's one example of accessibility, right? But the sensory input that we can get about an individual from different sources actually can enhance accessibility a lot more than we have ever been able to achieve in the past. Hope that answers your question.
Okay. I'd like to thank the panelists, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a terrific panel. In the spirit of the IoT bridging the physical and digital worlds, the experience of conferences like this one is also evolving. There's a very active digital conversation underway right now at Twitter, at Samsung DC, #VisionForTech. So please join in. Right now we're going to take a short break. I hope you'll have a chance to look at the exhibits of the Arctic IoT platform, the Connected Family Hub refrigerator, virtual reality, connected car, and refreshments. And we are going to resume promptly at 10:35. Thank you.